glue on the other rig is drying and finishing up, this is what you're supposed to come out with. As you can see, nothing special about it, nothing exciting, but it works and it does what it was made to be doing, which is to transform this into rings. So now let's go and show you how this is supposed to be done. Oh, and before you start cutting, I would suggest to put down a piece of cloth of some sort on the ground, because if it hits the concrete, the rings will bounce around and you might lose a bunch. You're going to lose some anyway, but with this, when they fall, they kind of not bounce, but they kind of just land on the cloth. So if you have a piece of cloth, a towel or anything like that, just drape it on the ground. And so what you need to do is get your rig, attach it into a vice grip. Make sure that this sucker is tight as it can go so that there's no movement whatsoever. Now get your wire. Basically just drop it to the ground. You remember those holes that we drilled into the rod. What you want to do now is more or less make a fish hook almost at the end of it. And what you want followed up is that you put it in that hole. And now all you got to do is slowly but surely turn it and make sure the wire stays even, and you just turn and turn and turn and make sure that the wire, and just keep on going until it reaches the very, very far end. Alright, as you can see here, this happens once in a while, is that the wire somehow goes back on itself and wraps around itself. So if this is the case, don't panic, don't freak out. All you have to do is that even though it's going like that, it's just going in the reverse direction. Let the wire straighten itself out, as you can see, like that, and then just continue onwards. So if it ever happens to you, don't worry about it. Just keep going. And as you can see, sometimes some of the wire may not be completely straight like that. So you could, if you want to go back, you can always go back again and then restrain it again. And just keep on, and just keep going. Okay, so here you go. You got one complete coil of 16 gauge male rings. How do you get them off though? Okay, but before I do that, I just want to show you what I was talking about earlier, what would happen. As you can see, this thing has been completely wrapped around itself. So this is going to be what I was talking about. You're going to have problems with that sometimes. So best option is to just snip it, which is what I was getting at. So once you have a complete coil and it is tight, the problem is though it's tight against the rod. So even if you cut it, you're going to have a pain. It's going to be a pain to get them off. So what I learned is that once you tighten it up so much, is then you go in a reverse. You go reverse for a couple turns until you have some movement on it, as you can see, like this. Once you have movement and you know you can remove the coil from the rod, get a pair of snips. You cut where the coil meets the hole, like that, and you cut the other end as such. It's like the umbilical cord on a baby. Of course, that's if the snips work. Sometimes that's the other thing. Make sure your snips are sharp. So now that the coil is unhooked from everything, all you have to do is grab it, pull the rod out, and booyah, you have a coil. Okay, so after you wrap the wire around the rig, you come up with these. These are the coils. So what do you do with these? Well, one thing you could always do is make enough of them. You can make a bed, but I don't think that's the reason you're watching this. What I'm going to show you next is how to cut these at an even length. So if you want to watch, we come to this. Back to the vice grip again. Alright, so have your vice grip. Take your coil and more or less tighten it as best as you can. You see, when I first did this, I was very scared about tying it so much that I was going to crush the rings. One day, after just being so frustrated about the whole entire thing being unstable and popping all over the place, I just tightened it to see how much it could take. I was very surprised about it because I tightened it so much I needed a pair of vice grips to remove it. So you don't have to really worry about it, but if you do, just slowly but surely go down, tighten it as much as you feel comfortable with, and just keep on going until it starts crushing, which I'm doubtful will happen. Next you want to get is your hacksaw. The reason I use a hacksaw and not a pair of snips is that what happens is that when you use snips, you have something called beaking, which would be where the opening is. There'd be slowly two pieces of metal pointing outwards like a pirate's beak or a bird's beak. And the problem is, like magician rings, is that if it moves properly, the two ends would finally meet up with each other and pop themselves out, and more or less your arm would just, your chain, your mail, would slowly but surely fall apart on you. With this, when you use a hacksaw, you have a completely flush cut, just like this piece. So, and then when you close it, it becomes a complete ring. So you don't have to worry about it falling apart. Even though it will, if it gets bent out or moved the wrong way, it will bend and it will pop out, but it's less likely. So get your hacksaw. Make sure you have a couple of blades, because the more you cut, as you can figure, the more you cut, the more it's going to dull the blade, and you're going to just have to replace them eventually. I go through maybe 4 or 5 of these coils before I have to replace the blade. I mean, you can do it with the dull one, but it'll take forever, and that's the reason for this tutorial, to show you how to make mail relatively quickly, so that you can spend all your time on making the mail shirts or whatever piece of jewelry or whatever you want to make. So what you do is that you have the piece of mail ring or wire sticking out like that. Line it up like that, and you just slowly slowly but surely cut through. And as you can see, we got a bunch of mail. So once you go to a certain point, you won't be able to cut anymore. You take out the pieces that have fallen, that have been cut, get the coil, just line it back up again. Make sure you have a couple of the rings that you've already that are slightly cut, so you have a mark about where you want to keep on cutting. You tighten it again, and you just keep on going, doing this consistently. It is repetitive, but when it comes to armor and making anything like this, you have to go through repetition to a point, which is the unfortunate side effect, but the rewards I always feel are justified to the repetition.